So I spend a lot of time researching gaming online.
Yep.
And one of the things that I see is there's a wide variety of classes, and people keep looking for more and more classes because they say what's out there doesn't fit what they need.
Yeah.
That's something that I kind of disagree with. I think there's a lot you can do with the existing classes, and you can still bring a flavor of something that's not explicitly spelled out into the books into the game just through your descriptions and flavoring of the existing classes that are already there.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree. I think that the base classes that are in the book, like, pretty much can cover almost everything.
So I was thinking maybe we can take an episode and talk a little bit about the different classes and some of the different options you can do to make it stand out from the expected.
Yeah, sounds good.
Hello and welcome to GameMasters Studio, where we'll be talking tabletop role-playing games, tips and tricks to help bring your game at home up to the next level. Today's topic, we'll be talking about reimagining some of the character classes in new flavors to bring exciting options to your game. My name is Jerry, aka Frieden.
I'm Jared, aka dm.f.
And we're talking today reimagining character classes. Now, the base 5th edition D&D Player's Handbook comes with 12 classes, which we've kind of laid out so that we can kind of go through and just give a quick rundown on how to take something from the class that's not what you'd normally expect, but maybe a little variant to make it a little bit more colorful, a little bit more interesting. There's too much people getting locked into the mindset of this is the way that a class is done and this is all you can do. So we wanted to give some other options and see what maybe you guys think, and maybe hopefully give you some ideas and somebody will latch on something and say that's cool and give it a shot.
Yeah, there's definitely, I mean, in my personal opinion, there is so much that can be done with the base classes. There, again, I think it will cover pretty much anything that you want to do. And if one single class doesn't do it, then I think that, throwing in the multi-class option, if your DM's okay with it, will get you to where you need to be.
Absolutely.
I mean, everyone wants to kind of play new classes and come up with new classes, and there's lots of cool ideas. And I understand that by making your own class, you can truly customize the mechanics of what you can do, but there's no reason that you can't just reflavor what's already there to accomplish thematically what you want to do.
Right. So top of the list, we have the Barbarian.
Right.
Traditionally, when you have a Barbarian, you generally get one of two images. You get the Savage Bruiser or the Viking Berserker.
Yeah.
Which is really split in 5th edition as the Totemic Warrior and the Berserker subclass of Barbarian. Mm-hmm. Some of the other things that we were talking about that we came up with for different options for our Barbarian, one of the ones I like is to actually reflavor it as a Samurai. Yeah. His rage becomes an intense focus in which he feels no pain, and his strikes cut with swift accuracy, and he can unleash upon his enemy a great Kai and use the reckless attack to gain advantage, but it puts his blade out of position to defend, so enemies get advantage on him as well. I think there's a lot of stuff that you could do there. If you're thinking big brute with a big axe who hits things hard, then the Samurai wouldn't necessarily enter what you're thinking.
Right.
But I think as a flavor, it works with the existing mechanics to make something that feels different.
Yeah, that was actually probably one of my favorites from the pre-show when we were going through ideas. Like, that was something that, like, to me, thematically, didn't, like, even cross my mind. But as soon as you started explaining how you would reflavor the mechanics, like, it totally fit. It totally worked. Like, I'm thinking Samurai would be as far as possible from a Barbarian. Like, you got Rage versus Zen, but, like, mechanically what Rage does can totally be translated into, like, a Zen trance, like you mentioned. So,
and, even the requirements of Rage mechanically, like, you have to deal damage or take damage in order to keep it going, which is still, the fact that if he's dealing damage, then his focus is doing what it needs to and is into it. If he's taking damage, then he's using that pain to sharpen his focus. And then it's when nothing else is going on that he kind of snaps out of it. And it's like, oh, okay, fight's over.
Yeah. It's great reskinning.
So next on the list, we have the Ranger. Mm-hmm. Rangers kind of have the two flavors that are normally there. You're either looking at a Legolas or a Drizzt.
Yeah.
You have your Legolas machine gun arrow archer or Drizzt close quarters twin weapons,
right.
Spinning attacker. We had a couple of different reflavorings for that we came up with.
Yeah, I liked your idea, which I'll let you go over. The other thing that I mentioned was kind of going for like more of like maybe like a Diablo 3 like Demon Hunter kind of thing, like taking the dual wield concept of like of Dritz, and but instead of dual wielding like swords or scimitars like he does, you dual wielding your crossbows. And just kind of going for like the Legolas rapid fire machine gun thing, but in a much closer range. I think crossbows were like a 30-foot range or something like that. They're pretty close range. I mean, you're not in melee, but you're up pretty close to the fight compared to like the typical Legolas type with the longbow.
And you were also talking that they could work as like a gunslinger flavor,
right? Yes, absolutely. Like, and I know that there's like Matt Mercer has his gunslinger class out there. A lot of people have been playing with that and saying that that's really cool. I honestly haven't checked it out yet. But if you just reflavor the Ranger as like a gunslinger, whether they, use like a rifle or dual wielding like revolvers or whatever you want to do there, I mean, that's between you and your DM. I know that there are stats for guns in like the DMG also. So like there's already stats for guns, that's available. And just, using your Ranger as a gunslinger or, some other sort of gun wielder.
Yeah. My idea in the pre-show, just while we were talking about different options for taking the same mechanics and making a different flavor, was the longbow sniper. Yeah. Each round he fires a single precise shot at a single enemy. Now, if your Ranger has 2 or 3 attacks, you make 2 or 3 attack rolls. And if they all hit, then they all do damage. You just flavor that as a single perfect, well-placed arrow that maybe does double damage or triple damage if all 3 hit. And obviously damage resistance would come into play accordingly. We're not trying to cheat the mechanics or make anything better here. It's just reflavoring it as, instead of putting 20 arrows downfield in 2 seconds, I'm going to take my shot, I'm going to see how it lines up, and I'm going to hit the enemy that I need to hit them where I need to hit them.
Right, yeah. So, again, you'd roll however many attacks you have, you'd roll them all, and you'd roll out all the damage, all the same. Everything would be exactly the same mechanically. It would just be reflavored as one single arrow striking its target. If you hit twice, it does 2 arrows worth of damage. If it hits 3 times, it does 3 arrows worth of damage. So really just kind of all, you flavor it as how well that hit placed. If only 1 of 3, hits, were successful, then you only winged them as, where if all 3 of them were successful, you put one right through their chest.
Right in the chink of the armor.
Yeah.
So, we, next on the list, because we're just kind of keeping it grouped thematically by class type, is the fighter.
Right.
Talking about this earlier, the fighter, we actually had the hardest time coming up with things for, because there's so much that the fighter already entails. There's a lot of use of the fighter as the soldier, the knight, the man at arms. But I mean, really just about anybody who gets physical could be flavored as a fighter.
Yeah. I mean, anyone that has any sort of, martial training in any way, shape, or form. Like if you're going for more like of a modern day or sci-fi kind of adventure, then your modern day, like soldier, your marine, your army ranger, futuristic. You got your stormtrooper. Whatever kind of the flavor is, they're your guy. It's okay. So instead of using a sword or whatever, they're using they got a handgun, or they have their M16 that they rock. But if they have to get into close quarter fighting, then they pull out the old bayonet and they go to town. They're well trained, they're versatile. They cover, the fighter class can cover so much. It's just like, what can't you do with them?
And I think the fighter also really comes into playing outside the box. There requires you to play with your combat abilities, as in your descriptions and flavor there.
Right.
I had a Eldritch Knight that I played a little bit with, using the weapon summoning to have his weapon kind of teleporting in and out of combat. Mm-hmm. So mechanically, he swings and he hits. In flavor, he swings, the enemy goes to parry, his weapon disappears and then reappears on the other side of the enemy weapon, and the slice continues and hits them.
Right.
So he's doing kind of a Magic Knight anime thing where his weapon came and went as needed to help his fight. And that flavored it, even though mechanically it was just, did I hit or did I miss?
Yeah, I mean, if you're into anime or any of that stuff, I mean, your fighter can cover almost any of that stuff, depending on how you look at it. I would just, I would, like, if you make your fighter an Eldritch Knight is how I would do it. Like, you can pretty much make any kind of like anime based ish character. You have some techniques that you can do, which would be your spells. You know, you have your fighting prowess, and you just go and you just rock it. And it's up to you how you describe those situations and how you use your abilities and cast your spells in combat that are really going to give it that anime kind of flavor or feeling. I tend to try to bring a lot of, you know, anime flavor into my D&D games, but I don't like overwhelm the game with it. It's just mostly like combat. So I'll try to get a little bit more. I make it, to me, it feels like it's getting a little bit more epic when you have like this anime kind of, you know, like, okay, like, you know, two guys go at each other and they slash, and all of a sudden, you know, the screen goes black and fa-ching, you know, you have that little, the flash, and then, you know, the guy's down, or, you know, they're using this, like, if you're, I know we're going to get into the monk in a minute, but if you're using like your monk ability and you start, you know, shadow stepping from one place to the other, all of a sudden I'm thinking of Ninja Scroll, where there's a dude that can like travel through shadows. Like, why aren't you flavoring it like that? So it's all about how you portray it at the table.
How you get into those descriptions.
Yeah.
I also, the description that you used there of the anime with the going black and the single sword slash, we were talking about that in the pre-show as a paladin, as a reflavor for the smite.
Right.
Ability, because really it is focusing energy into a single concentrated strike, and that is the paladin smite, and that is an option here for paladins. You know, rather than being the holy knight, you could have somebody who's, you know, they seek the spirituality from within, or they're, you know, the penitent trying to atone for past deeds, and they're just throwing themselves in. The troll slayers of Warhammer could count as paladins. I will erase the dishonor I have brought to my family by doing great and glorious deeds until one of those deeds ends me. I think, since we brought it up, playing a troll slayer as a paladin would be really fun and interesting character.
Yeah, I agree. I was also, you know, we didn't mention the anime thing in the pre-show, but as I'm mentioning that for Eldritch Knight, I think that would work even just as well, if not better, for the paladin. You know, like the whole focusing energy into my blade, and, you know, and using a smite that I'm reflavoring as, you know, I'm trained in the ways of the fire samurai, and I'm trained in the ways of the, you know, the lightning people, and, you know, you're just focusing this energy into your attack, which you're using as a smite.
Yeah.
Whether you're using the actual smite spell or not to add extra mechanics or not, you know, that's up to you. But whenever you use a smite, you just flavor it as like, you know, this focus, you know, I'm using the technique handed down through the Corporate family for over 10,000 years.
All right. So, and anime definitely brings us into the monk class.
Yes, definitely.
There's some very strong anime flavors that can be had there. Although I think when we were discussing it, you were talking about how a lot of it comes into reflavoring and reimagining, not the character itself, but the weapons.
Yes, I think an important function for people playing the monk class is, one, to reflavor the weapons, and two, to reflavor or to think outside what you might find the standard for like your martial arts style or background / culture. So, and it says right in the 5th edition, you know, right in the player's handbook, that using quote unquote like martial art weapons or whatever, you're going to use the same stats as what's already in the book. You're just going to reflavor them. So it's there, it's already spelled out for you. It's just, you need to use it. So one of the things that they make an example of is, if you want to use nunchucks, a nunchuck, really, you're just, I'm like, yes, you're cranking up the velocity by spinning it on a chain, but really you're just clubbing somebody. You're hitting them with a blunt stick. So you're just using the club mechanic. I'm just going to roll this 1d6 for damage. It's bludgeoning damage. Thematically, I'm using nunchucks. I'm going to sit here and dual wield these clubs mechanically that are nunchucks. And we're going to have some Michelangelo or Bruce Lee action going on. And we're just going to nunchuck around. Or you're reflavoring the short sword as a wakizashi, a dagger as a tanto, your long sword as your katana. You can have, instead of it being a sickle, it can be a
kami.
A kami. Thank you. I was like, oh my god, my brain just went. Yeah. So instead of it being a quarterstaff, it is just a bow staff. So I mean, that's kind of a very subtle change, you know, just wording wise, but. Yeah, I mean, there's another one was like, instead of I'm going to use a whip. No, well, I'm going to I'm going to reflavor the whip as like a chain. Like I fight with chains, like more of like a Ghost Rider kind of thing, you know, or again, on the club concept or even the staff concept, depending on what you want to go with and what your DM says is cool. 3-section staff.
Yep.
Again, you're still rolling the same things and they're doing the same, you know, bludgeoning damage, slashing damage, piercing damage, whatever, you know, like you mentioned, which for another one too, but instead of darts, they're throwing stars.
Yep. Well, specifically, that was instead of darts, they are batarangs.
Right. Which
we started getting into the whole, we're going to do Monk Batman.
Yes.
Shadow steps, smoke bombs, increased speed. Where did he go? He's too fast. You know, he's got plenty of hand-to-hand combat, batarangs and such.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. If you go Way of the Shadow, yeah, here you can be Batman. They're absolutely like.
And I was actually reminded of another superhero character that would fit this Talk of the Monk class, and that's from Sentinels of the Multiverse, Mr. Fixer, who is a martial artist type who has sworn off using weapons, but he still has tools at his disposal. So he has, you know, he doesn't have a club, he has a pipe wrench. Instead of a staff, he's using a jack handle. You know, so he's using just ordinary tools that are around in the same way that he would be using martial arts weapons.
Right.
So flavor wise, it's just the same as if somebody was using that type of weapon, or mechanical it's the same as if they're using that weapon, but flavor wise, it's these different tools and equipment being used.
Yeah, and when it comes to the actual character itself, or, you know, again, like I think that, you know, you should be looking at different you know, martial arts kind of backgrounds. There's so many different type of martial arts in the world. You got Taekwondo, and there's a gazillion different forms of Kung Fu. There's several dozen forms of karate, whether you realize it or not. There is, you know, you got ninjutsu, you got all kinds of different variants, you know, capoeira.
Yep.
There's a Vietnamese martial art that I can't think of the name of off the top of my head. Like there's martial arts that you probably don't even know exist out there. So if you just say that my monk is a monk of this type of martial art, you've instantly reflavored how they're going to be doing their actions. I mean, you don't have to be you don't have to have studied this martial art. Just look for some YouTube videos or something out there just to see how they, like, Taekwondo favors kicks, and, you know, Kempo favors, you know, using your hands and being very quick with your hands, but, you know, not using a lot of feet.
And a lot of people joke about it online, but I'd like to see somebody seriously do a lucha libre monk.
Yeah.
You know, do flying clotheslines and swinging neck breakers and hip tosses and suplex your enemies just to see how it works out.
Yeah, I agree. There's actually so much room for monk. I mean, anything that's using, and it doesn't have to just be hand to hand. You can be hand to hand. Again, there's lots of different martial arts styles that favor different weaponry. You know, you can say, I want to make an Electra style character, and now all of a sudden, instead of using daggers, I'm using sai. You know, I want to be Donatello from the Ninja Turtles. Okay, sure. Here's your quarterstaff. I want to be Michelangelo. Here's your club / nunchucks.
I could also see a forgiving DM. I want to be Daredevil. So I have a club that can also transition into a staff, so I can switch back and forth. Maybe like work it out with the DM so it takes like a bonus action to switch between.
Well, I mean, technically in 5th edition rules, during your move action, you can draw a weapon. So, I mean, as long, again, it's up to DM's discretion.
As part of the move action?
As part of the move action, just you're switching from one weapon type to the other. Like, I mean, to me, that sounds pretty cool. You know what I mean? Like, I tend to reward, you know, like there should always be this underlining the cool rule or the awesome rule. Like, sounds awesome, doesn't break the game. Let's do it.
All right. Next on the list, we have rogues.
Yes, rogues.
Rogues is another one I think is similar to fighter.
They cover a lot.
Where there's so much that they cover that's hard to come up with something outside the box.
Yeah.
You know, normally they are thought of as either this ultimate ninja assassin or, you know, the sneaky cat burglar type.
Yes.
And there's so much more that you can do with them.
There is so much to do with them, like the fighter, that I almost don't even know where to begin. Like you mentioned, I mean, some people already go to this because there is the subclass of assassin. But like if I had to make a ninja and I was not allowed to multi-class in this game, I would go rogue. I would 99% because of the sneak attack. I would reflavor it as like a death touch. You know, me just walking up behind you and yeah, maybe I have to use a dagger and I stab, you know, for the mechanics or whatever, because you're not supposed to be able to use hand to hand or like bare hands for a sneak attack anymore. Yeah. But I walk up behind you and I know exactly where to put this dagger, stab, and you're dead. I am the ninja. And that's without even getting into the subclass of the assassinate ability.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, some people already go there. And I think prior to 5th edition, I likely would not have automatically gone there. But again, with that subclass of the assassin, you kind of just draws you towards that. So, but yeah, I mean, ninjas are also supposed to be like this super skilled character. So, and the rogue gets more skills than anyone, which is another reason why rogue is so versatile. Like, while our fighters are so versatile in martial combat, they have a lot of options there. The rogue is extremely versatile in the skills area of the game. So if you want to make any kind of skill-based character, rogue is going to probably be where you're going to start. Yeah, and I'd like to see a thief pacifist rogue, almost the gentleman thief. Like, I don't bring a gun because I don't need a gun, because if it even comes to violence, then everything has gone horribly wrong already. Yeah. And this is the character who gets in, who takes his mark and leaves without ever being detected. Yeah. Yeah. I like that. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely a lot of movie references you could go to for something like that, you know, for the gentleman thief, you know, like, you know, people used to have honor in this game, you know what I mean? Like, you know, honor amongst thieves and all that stuff. Yeah, I dig that. Another thing I was thinking, which I mentioned like in the pre-show, like if you're doing more of like a modern day or even like a, you know, a slightly futuristic kind of game, you like kind of like Shadowrun, but your DM doesn't run Shadowrun. You're doing 5th edition or whatever. Like, I think like half the characters in Shadowrun could be reskinned into rogue, or reskinned at, you know, use a rogue as your base and reskin to like a Shadowrun kind of like your hackers. Yeah. You know, they got most of your skills, you know, and you can, like, if you look at like today as like not necessarily what you might consider a class, but more of like an occupation, anything on the shady side can be rogue. Gun runners, human traffickers, you know, I mean, it's. Hey kids, do you ever want to role play that you were trading in human lives? Well, but I'm just saying, you know, like that kind of like the whole shady side of things, you know, which is where my mind goes when I think Shadowrun. Like the first thing I think is, you know, hacker. And then I start thinking just the shady, gritty side of life. Actually, it could be kind of interesting to have a group of players trying to do a modern game as drug runners, and like the DM is playing the law enforcement, and they have to figure out how to get over and around it. It'd be very exciting. I mean, a little maybe like, is this the type of thing we should be glamorizing? But at the same time, well, yeah. But I mean, it's also that's kind of like just taking the concept of playing an evil game, and just putting it in modern day. And which it would also be good practice if you have issues with your evil campaigns imploding. A little bit of a tangent, but like if you have issues with your evil game imploding, if you put them into a modern situation where like you guys are a bunch of drug runners, you've known each other and have been working together for years, and you're now, you know, trying to keep your business running, and the DM is basically playing the cops and the, you know, the good guys. You're honestly being able to relate to that as a modern day situation, having seen movies based on that, also glamorizing, you know, that kind of situation. Yeah. You're probably less likely to have the group implode on itself. Well, also a lot of those movies end with the group imploding on themselves. Yeah, but they get higher levels. Yeah. Another fun reflavor for Rogue, it was kind of a bit of a mechanics, bit of a joke thing. In 4th edition, one of my players played a Minotaur Rogue. Okay. And he played him as he was the muscle of the cartel. And it was things like his pickpocket involved clubbing somebody over the head into unconsciousness and then pulling stuff out of their pocket. When he had to pick a lock, he just broke the doorknob off and opened the door. And at one point he was actually trying to sneak and move silently. And somebody who knew who he was saw him and pretended he didn't see him, because if he had spotted him, then the Minotaur would have clubbed him into unconsciousness, and he wanted to avoid that. Yeah, that's good. I like that. So it was a very tongue-in-cheek, and the character only was there for a couple of sessions, but it was hilarious while he was just kind of like, you know, 7.5 foot tall, 350 pounds, sneak. Yeah. Well, what's kind of funny is like the first thing that I'm just going through my head is like how people would react to having something like that. Like, oh, well, he's not strong enough to just break the doorknob to then be able to like, but mechanically, like what really changed? If he was successful at the lockpick, right, the door would have opened. And who cares if he really is strong enough to break the doorknob? And it's actually a case where it puts the player at a disadvantage, because if you pick the lock, you're essentially unlocking it and opening it. Yeah. You break off the doorknob to open it, and now somebody comes through and they're not going to be, hey, I thought that door was locked. And instead going to be, this was broken into. Right. Yes.
And instantly going to know that something's wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. It will instantly alert someone like, hey, the doorknob is missing. Also, you can't lock the door behind you.
Right.
So anyone can just bump the door and open it and see whatever you may or may not be doing in there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely dig it. I totally dig it.
And then next on the list, we have the close cousin of the rogue, which is the bard. Again, I feel the bard is an underutilized class. There's a lot of different flavors. Even though the 5th edition player's handbook only has the 2 routes laid out, the School of Lore and the School of Valor, they're still so broad. There's so much you can do, and they're so different from each other. Unlike any other class, a Bard of Lore and a Bard of Valor are so different that they almost feel and play like different classes.
Yeah. Even
on their just standard mechanical.
Yeah, I honestly, if I could have a D&D game, I would play. Let me rephrase. If I could play in 13 different D&D games, I think at least 8 of those I'd be a bard. That's just I used to always be, or I still am, at heart, I'm a wizard guy. That's where I want to be. That's where I can get that true arcane power. So many options, so much I can do. But I love the 5th edition bard. They're just so versatile, and they can just finally do everything that I think they were meant to be able to do. And, being a Final Fantasy, 11 MMO player for a little while and kind of digging the Red Mage back in the day, I kind of gravitate towards the Bard.
I remember when I first picked up the 5th edition, player's handbook, and I was reading through it, and I saw the Bards, and I was like, wow, they've given them a huge boost over previous editions. They almost start to feel overpowered. And yeah, my first character in 5th edition was a Bard of the College of Valor, with the idea of it's a red mage. I can fight with weapons. I have medium armor. I can cast spells to heal. I can cast spells to damage. I can do everything.
Yes.
And it's not, I can do everything at a weak level where I'm spread so thin that I can't do anything. You actually have moderate levels of competence across the board.
Yeah, I mean, that was honestly, it was my first impression too. When I saw the bard, I thought red mage, an arcane caster with cure wounds, red mage.
Right.
I can fight with a sword, I can cast arcane spells, and I can cure wounds. I am the red mage. I am, I'm a little black mage, I'm a little white mage, I'm a little fighter. I got the whole kit and caboodle. I don't suck it, and I'm not third best at everything and good at nothing. I'm good at everything. I'm not taking anyone's place, but I'm good at everything that I do. So yeah, I loved it. Red Mage, first thing that comes to my mind. What was the other one that we were saying? The
College of Lore?
Yeah, College of Lore. The fact that every time I play a College of Lore bard, I can start stealing spells from other lists. And I know there's optimizers out there that will say there's only X number of spells that you have to take, and that's it, and to be OP and blah, blah, blah. But every time I play a College of Lore bard, I have so many options in my flavoring, depending on how I've been playing that bard and what I want to accomplish as a character with that spell choice. When I steal spells from other people's lists, they can be different spells every single time. So it's I'm not just bound to this one bard list of spells. I can steal some spells from wizard over here and some spells from cleric over there and some spells from druid over there to accomplish this, whatever I want to accomplish with this character. And just the spell selection alone is going to make this character different from every other College of Lore bard that I may or may not have played. Not to mention how I'm role-playing them and, and all the other options that I've chosen up to that point. Just with the spell selection, I can be completely different every single time.
And there is one other key component to the bard that if you want to try to avoid stereotypes, that you want to try to do something that's outside the box, and that is the music. A lot of people think that bards are tied to music. The bard has to be a musician of some sort. It all works through music and performance. While it does work to a degree on performance, it doesn't have to be a musical performance. I remember hearing the College of Lore bard who was a slam poet and insult comic, and that works. My red mage bard that I first played in 5th edition was actually a storyteller. He liked to tell tall tales and make jokes and all that. He didn't sing because he didn't need to. He still had the ability to convey, emotions and whatever through the stories instead. You don't need to be a musician to be a bard.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There's lots of different options. You can be storyteller, like you said, you can be a herald, you can be It's just supposed to be like that you have like this creative outlet that your magic flows through. So, I mean, there's so many
interpretive dance.
if that's what you want to do. I don't know if that'll help your case with the group.
Well, it's better than adult dance.
Yeah, okay.
That's a different that's a bard as well. That would be not appropriate for every game, but it would be interesting to see that attempt to work into a game.
Yes, that would be something.
Well, there would definitely be a lot of like hypnosis and charm spells going on, I think.
Yes, definitely.
So moving along from bard, we have the cleric and the druid.
Yeah.
Which we kind of put together because I might get some flack for this, but a druid is very much a cleric of nature with different abilities, different skills, different focuses, but it is still very much a spellcaster getting divine ability from a source. That source is just nature rather than a specific god.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any issues personally, putting them into the same bracket, especially for this particular conversation, because I think they kind of have the same things going on thematically for like what we're talking about, or mixing it up. So, I mean, they both are, for all intents and purposes, without getting into details, they're both basically divine casters.
Yeah.
They both can technically wear medium armor. Depending on what type of cleric you choose, you can wear heavy armor. And you're both able to use, and yes, druids can't wear metal, but whatever. And they can both use, a variety of weapons. Again, clerics have different options depending on what they chose for a god, what type of cleric they are, but they all have access to a variety of, the clerics more so than druids have access to a variety of weapons. Druids have a smaller list, but they have some options, quarterstaff, scimitar, sickle, etc. So I think my biggest issue that I have with these is when I think cleric. I mean, so your typical cleric / druid, your typical cleric is going to be, your holy crusader, rocking the medium or heavy armor, rocking the mace or the warhammer, up in the thick of it, fighting alongside the fighter, with a shield, throwing out some turn undeads when needed, throwing out some heals when needed. That's your atypical kind of like, de facto cleric that comes to my mind.
Which people don't want to play because it's boring.
And then your atypical druid is going to be something similar. They're going to typically be maybe not in the middle of it all, but somewhere up in the combat. Either they're going to be wild shaped in the combat, depending on if they go circle of the moon, or they still might be wild shaped if they go circle of the land, just with some more limitations. Or they're going to be up there, on the outskirts, casting their spells, but they're going to be close to the combat. I think of my healers, and this is again from some MMO. I've been playing D&D way longer than I've been playing MMOs. But my MMOs have tainted, my whole 2 years of playing, because I'm not like an avid player, but they kind of tainted my perspective of healing. Like I played a white mage in Final Fantasy 11 for a year and a half, 2 years. I would like to see some more like clothy style kind of like clerics and druids where I can wear medium armor, I can wear light armor. I don't wear armor. I'm more of like a wizard in that kind of aspect. Like I don't wear the armor. I stay on the outskirts. I just throw out the healing spells. I throw out the buff spells. I throw out some debuff spells. I am support. I am not in the thick of it. I am here to be a man of the cloth, to protect my comrades and to help vanquish evil from a safe distance.
And we discussed this in the pre-show as well. I had a character in 2nd edition that was a cleric of healing, and he had taken a vow of pacifism. So he would never kill someone. Nor would he stand by if his party was like going to execute a prisoner or anything like that. If somebody dies in combat, that's a thing. But so he healed and, buffed, debuffed, but he did not deal damage because he refused to raise his fist in violence to something that was alive.
Yeah. Yeah, I dig it.
However, in order to avoid being difficult, I had to play that character in a campaign where we were going after like the source of undead. Just so I'm not nope, can't help you in the fight. Don't hurt people. So we can do that.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's clerics. They have a lot of options. I mean, a lot of these classes are just built with a lot of variety already. So saying that there's really no option for you in the player's handbook just confuses me.
And the cleric can kind of mimic most of the other classes.
Yeah.
You want a fighter, war cleric. You need a rogue, trickery cleric. You need a spellcaster, blaster, light cleric. You need a little more of a divination wizard type, knowledge cleric.
Yeah.
A lot of options you can do there.
Yeah, they can cover it all. And druids have a lot of options, as well. I mean, there's only Circle of the Land or Circle of the Moon. But if you're Circle of the Land, you can choose what type of land type. You got swamps and forests and grasslands. Yeah, there's a lot of options there that'll help, tweak your spell list a little bit. If you're Circle of the Moon, then there's a lot of options on what you can wild shape into. The higher level you get them, the higher the CR rating of the creature that you can turn into is. Once you hit 6th level, you're already turning into CR2 creatures, which doesn't sound big, but it's basically a free hit point pool. You know what I mean? So
and another just for characterization for the cleric or druid, I think they would both be good choices for the magically imbued character who doesn't know why. Like, even though that's kind of like, well, isn't that the sorcerer gimmick? I think it would be great to have a character who has been chosen by the divine powers that be, who didn't bother to tell him. And his friend is dying and he laid hands on him and healed him. All he did was cast Cure Wounds, but he didn't exactly know how he did that. And now he's trying to figure out what's going on and figure out what he can do and why he can do it. What's his purpose in the world? Yeah. Flavoring it as a cleric because he's getting these powers from he doesn't know where.
Yeah, I like the idea of doing that. If it was going to be like, you have divine powers, cleric style, from somewhere that you don't know about, you could be, I was born under this, the cosmos were in alignment when I was born on this day, like I was born under this special star kind of thing. If it was going to be druid, then it was like, I was born at midnight on the summer solstice on the year of whatever that happens to be extra holy for druids in my world, or something along those lines. Or, maybe something like bit my mother while I was, still in the womb. Like maybe for whatever reason, no one knows why a cobra bit my mother while I was still in the womb, or maybe even like a magical beast of some sort,
a snake walker.
Yeah. So yeah, kind of like the blade thing, like you're getting infected while you're still, in utero kind of deal that so you're just able to draw upon these druidic powers and you don't even know why. All of a sudden, like, you're wild shaping, but, kind of pull like a little bit of a lycanthropy thing out. Like, on the first full moon after you hit puberty, you wild shape by accident, you could start kind of playing that up with your background there and your history of your character.
You actually gave me an idea of it's from another piece of fiction, but to steal, there's a character was related to these cultists that were performing magical rites intended to give them power. And what was happening was, well, the kid was sleeping upstairs. The parents were doing the rites in the basement. And the energy they didn't realize was coming down from above. So since they were doing all these rites, they thought they weren't working, but all of the magical power was being imbued into the child.
Ah.
So as the child grew up, all of a sudden he's starting to get these abilities that he doesn't know where they're coming from either. And, it's just that backstory that he doesn't find out for a while as to what was actually happening. And that's sounds like a good cleric reflavoring for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorcerer and Wizard is the next one on the list. The Sorcerer was actually what kind of sparked this decision or this topic. I actually had the idea of playing a Sorcerer that was a sci-fi commando, and his spells were different gear that he had. So it's not a firebolt, it's laser blaster, and it's not magic missile, it's laser blaster rapid fire. And not a fireball, but he's throwing a grenade, and he's not using jump. He's using a grappling hook or rocket thrusters in his boots that he can set to jump, levitate, or fly, depending on what he needs. There's a lot you can do for flavoring the sources of spells. And I think also the spells themselves are a great source of reflavoring and just making them appear to fit your character while not touching the mechanics at all.
Yeah, and even though we didn't really touch on it for the previous classes, the same can be true for all the other spellcaster classes. How you flavor your spells will say a lot about how your character is flavored itself. So which plays a lot into, especially, I mean, it plays for all of them. I was going to say like the bard, like how you choose to cast, whether it's singing or playing a musical instrument or telling stories. But, Same is true for how you present your holy symbol with clerics, and how you might call upon the divine powers as your paladin. And so every spellcaster class, how you present your spells, how they function, what they look like, where they come from. Playing a sorcerer, technically it's your bloodline, but there's no reason that flavor-wise you are a futuristic Batman with just like a duffel bag full of different gizmos that accomplish what you needed to accomplish.
And we actually, not trying to brag too much here, but I think as far as the spells and such, we have some good examples in our Darkhounds games.
Yes.
We have a party where everybody can cast magic, and the magic that happens, there's a lot of flavor that goes along with it, and very individualized, so that you have these spells that are being thrown off, and they have the flavor. It feels like when Tristan casts a spell, there's a lot of lightning or thunder or electricity and energy, and that's something that Tristan is doing, because as the Tempest cleric, he's riding the lightning.
Yeah, it's not just, I want to cast this. Okay, you cast that. Yeah. So, I mean, the same kind of goes for Wizard. They're kind of, very much in the same kind of bracket. Wizards, I think, again, just reflavor. I think with the Sorcerer and the Wizard are probably more so than any other class, because they are just like 100% spell dependent. You know what I mean? Like, a cleric can still technically wear armor and fight with a weapon, and, a druid can still technically wild shape. And a lot of the other classes have backup mechanics in place to keep them up on par. But your wizard and your sorcerer are like, I cast spells. That's what I do. So almost all their flavoring is going to come from how you present those spells, where they come from. Are they from are they reflavored from some sort of tech gear? Are you shooting laser beams from your eyes?
And we also talked about this in the pre-show. There are different options too. You could be a runic caster, and you have these runes that you're using, or you're doing inscriptionist and doing like writing seals and attaching them to enemies, or doing directly to the enemy, like drawing a rune on them, and then that causes an effect to happen.
Yeah, I did like that when we were talking about that in the pre-show, like the concept of kind of being like saying you're like a rune caster, but you do like these little runes that like typically you're drawing in the air, but like for the touch attacks or whenever you're interacting with an actual person or object or something, you're actually like making a little inscription with your fingers on the person. So like if I was going to do shock and grasp, technically I would cast shock and grasp, and then I touch the thing, and then they get electrocuted. But if flavor wise, I run up and I just do like a quick little lightning bolt or something like that. And then you could even say thematically for fun, like there's a delay. So that, you run up and you're like, ha ha ha. And then they're like, what'd you just do? Oh God. Oh, it hurts. Don't let him touch you. That could be a lot of fun.
Yeah. I
kind of want to do that with my next wizard now, and be like a rune caster that just scribbles on people, and they're like getting beat up and they don't even know why.
Yeah. I personally kind of think the inscriptionist type, where he scribes out his spells quickly, or uses the purity seals like you see in a lot of the animes, or I mean even Warhammer has them, even though I don't think they have quite the same effect.
Right. Yeah. Where all of a sudden there's just like this little strip of paper with some scribble on it, and then you just slap it on them, and all of a sudden bzz, that takes effect. Yeah.
Right.
That's totally a cool concept too.
And then last on the list, more because we were kind of moving through a combination of slightly alphabetical but also thematic, is Warlock.
Yeah.
Warlock has I feel a lot of the stuff we said for sorcerers and wizards fits with Warlock.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you also have an option to do a lot of different flavoring with the pact patrons.
Yes. Yeah, I think that there's only 3 packs in the book, and there are good 3 packs to start with, but there is no reason that you can't either reflavor the existing packs or come up with some of your own packs. Again, this is all about like kind of reskinning and reflavoring, so I wouldn't really want to delve too much into like how to make a new patron or / pact, but you could easily as long as it's okay with the DM kind of mix and match. Like we made the example of like, I want to have a pact with the fire elemental and be kind of like a fire warlock, but where he's an outsider, I kind of like some of the flavor of like the Fey Pact warlock abilities. I want to kind of have that going for me for my character concept that I have in my mind. I would like to gain the abilities of the Fey Pact, but I would like to have the spells added to my spell list, my bonus spells from the Infernal Pact, because they're all fire based. and kind of have that, just mixing and matching, not changing anything mechanically. These abilities should be equal to those abilities and these spells should be equal to those spells. So you're just kind of mixing and matching what's already there between the 3 options to make your own little unique option. And boom, I have a pact with the fire elemental and I walk around calling myself Sparky.
And as a DM, you should look at those and decide whether or not they're equal. You could say that, well, you only want this ability added in because this, your level 3 ability here is a lot more powerful than the level 3 ability over here, which you may have players that are going to try to pull the fast one. Generally, give your players the credit of the doubt, take a look at it, and realize, worst comes to worst, you're not going to be playing these characters forever.
No.
So give it a shot, and if it doesn't work out, you can sit down and talk with them, have that player trust, that communication, or you can just accept the fact that it's not going to be there forever.
Yeah, there's lots of ways to deal with that in game, but that's another topic for another time. I just think that there's no reason that you can't be reflavoring a lot of these Warlock packs to give your Warlocks different flavors. I have a bunch of ideas for some different flavors for my game that I'm going to be working on. Some of them are just going to be flavors. Some of them are going to be some reskinning, and some of them are going to be building my own patrons, just so we have some more options there mechanically. That's your choice. But just between these 12 different classes,
there's a lot you can do.
Yeah. And then we haven't even touched on the concept, I think we touched on it, but we haven't even delved into the meat and bone of multi-classing.
Right.
Between these straight classes, you start adding in multi-classes. I really think, with multi-classing, you can accomplish pretty much anything you want.
And you don't need to go out and spend all those money buying those third-party supplements to make a character you use once and say, that was really fun. I wish I got to play him again. Now you can go through all of what you already have and make characters. This is really fun. This gives me an idea of another 3 things I want to do.
Yeah.
So, because we'll all never, ever get enough games.
No, we'll never get ideas. Yeah, we'll never get to do all of our ideas ever.
So thank you for joining us for our show today. As always, if you have any comments on today's topics or any stories you'd like to share about how you used it in your game, feel free to get in touch with us. Also, if there's anything you'd like to hear us discuss, let us know. You can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/GameMasters Subscribe for exclusive access to early content and also a few other special surprises and tricks we've been putting up there. You can get in touch with us on Twitter. We are GMS Studios. Available on Facebook for you to like, comment, and subscribe. And we have new episodes coming out every week with more information on running your game. We're posting them on Podbean at gamemasterstudio.podbean.com, through iTunes, and available now on YouTube as well. Speaking of YouTube, check out our Darkhounds 360 VR campaign. Watch us play through, use the tips that you see here, and occasionally miss an opportunity. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your support. We'll see you the next time that we get back into the studio.